My name is Daniela Taplin Lundberg. I am a film producer. I have a company in New York City called Stay Gold Features that I run with several other women. And this is the Hollywood Gold podcast. So I was born in Los Angeles. It's sort of a classic Hollywood story. My father was from the East Coast and had been a road manager for the band and Bob Dylan, and at a very young age followed his heart and got into rock and roll, becoming a concert producer as well. And then he decided to come out to LA and try his hand at producing. And he didn't know what that was, but he sort of knew that he had gumption and that the producer's job was to find the money, and he thought he could do that. And so very early on, he was introduced to a young editor named Martin Scorsese, and they met, and Scorsese handed him the feature script called Mean Streets, which was then called, I think, The Year of the Witch. And my dad loved it, and he was like, well, I think I can raise the money for this, like $1 million. Yeah, I can do that. And they ended up making the movie, and my dad never even realized that he could lose all that money. Like, he just thought that, like, if you make a movie, someone's going to buy it or watch it. And it wasn't until he was selling it that that reality came crashing down, that maybe no one would buy it. But, you know, he's one of my first interviews, and he tells the whole story. And it's the story I grew up with, because that film became such a legacy film and launched Scorsese and launched De Niro. And I just grew up thinking, oh, that's what producing is. That's what I want to do. And then on the flip side, my mother was the daughter of migrant workers in San Jose, California, and was the first child ever to go to college and had a dream of becoming an actress. And so came down to Los Angeles right after college and started getting like bit parts in Barney Miller. And she was really funny, and she was really beautiful. And she and my dad met at a Hollywood party, like at Seymour Cassell's house or something like that. And they fell in love, and they were together for 5 years and had me. And then the romance ended and they got divorced, but they're still very good friends. But I grew up around the business, and my stepfather was a very successful writer-director named David Ward. And he wrote The Sting when he was 27 and won an Oscar. And so we grew up with an Oscar in our house. And actually my favorite experience was going on set with him to make Major League, and they made it in Milwaukee. And I just was like, this is magic. Whatever's happening here is magic. And I remember they filmed the big scene with Charlie when Wild Thing comes out and he throws the final pitch, and they filled the stadium with 25,000 people, and they did it by offering like a free Nissan Sentra or something. And like just everyone from Milwaukee showed up, and it was so awesome. I was like, this is so brilliant. Like, I can come up with stuff like that, you know, getting free extras by offering a Nissan for like $6,000. It's brilliant. And I remember really sitting at the dinner table and listening to the music that he was considering for the edit. And I remember just going through like who he's considering to cast, and I just loved all that. So very early on, I knew I wanted to be in film, and I knew that I wasn't talented enough to direct or act. And so prior to COVID, but sort of on my commute, I live in Westport, Connecticut, and I commute into the city. I started listening to a lot of podcasts, and the ones I loved were the ones that told the sort of story of how great companies started and where they came from. I always love hearing founder stories, and film is very entrepreneurial in the same way. I remember listening to the story of how Warby Parker got started, and I was like, this feels so similar to the way some films get made, or most films get made, and particularly films that have real legacy. They're never easy. They're never the ones that are easy to make, because they're trying to do something different often. So I thought, oh, this would be a cool podcast. Like if I interviewed producers and really understood the story of how a film started, like the seed of it, and then how it became a success, I think people would be interested in that. And I was part of a group, or I am part of a group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And I was talking to the guys in my forum, the guys and the one woman, and they're all founders of their own companies. And they were like, you've got to do that. Like, I just want to hear how Thelma and Louise got made, or how The Graduate got made, or, all these great movies that we love. And I was like, well, I can do that. I know those producers. And people often think that producers are directors, which is a different thing, or they're writers. They don't know how to define what a producer does. And what I say is a producer is like the CEO of a company. You're the one who has the initial seed of an idea, and you're the one who has to get it going, meaning you have to find your filmmaker, you have to find your actors, you have to find the financing, you have to build the budget, you have to oversee that, you have to make sure it doesn't go over budget, you have to make sure that things happen on time and stay on schedule. And so a lot of producing is like launching the ship, and then it's putting out fires, and then it's making sure that whatever that product is, whether it's a film or television show or podcast, is getting out into the world in the right way. And so I want people to hear all the blood, sweat, and tears that go into these movies, because I actually think they're really fun stories in and of themselves. And it's not always pretty. And oftentimes, like, there's so much more drama involved than one would assume. I just want to hear all of it. And I think films are such a creative endeavor. It's really, really fun to hear how a creative vision becomes an actual piece of filmmaking. There was a moment where we were going to call this Blood, Sweat, and Tears, because a lot of times every film I've made has like torn my heart out. And my husband's like, why do you do this? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's like childbirth, like you give birth to a baby and you forget about how hard it is because you're so proud of who the baby is. And I've had 3 children. So, and I've had 30 film babies. And so I understand it. I understand the sort of dedication and passion. And there was a light bulb moment where I said, God, I wish I could record these conversations, because a lot of these producers are the best raconteurs. Like, they are great storytellers because they're made to sell. Like, that is their business. They have to sell the story to someone else. And so I think through the course of these podcasts, we're going to hear great stories from people who really know how to tell a story and have been through it all. So what I hope is that we're going to pull back the curtain and get some Hollywood gold from some of the industry's greatest producers. It's going to be so fun. Thank you all for listening.